Good evening, and welcome to Community Issues, a tapestry of concerns. I'm your host, Alyce Smith-Cooper, but you know that because you've been watching this show for a long time. And you may indeed know my guest because he's been around for a very long time in an incredible position in this community, whereby many of you may know him. My guest this evening is Dr. Richard Butcher. And there's just not many of us in San Diego that don't know Dr. Richard Butcher. Whether you've been a patient of his or a colleague of his, he has been on the scene in San Diego making decisions about health care and about providing health care in some very change agent kinds of ways. Let me tell you my story about first meeting Dr. Butcher professionally. I was teaching nursing at Palomar College in the early 70s, and my students wanted to do a project in the community, and they were interested in home birthing. In those days, we didn't have birthing rooms in the hospitals, and there was only one doctor that I knew that was doing birthings in the home, and that was Dr. Richard Butcher. So I brought my little nursing students from Palomar College, and we sat up in his office, and they did what I called live research. And that was our first time meeting meeting professionally, and that was a wonderful experience. But for those of you who have not met him personally or professionally, please may I introduce Dr. Richard Butcher. Dr. Butcher, you have been an incredible force in this community for healthcare, for everybody, but most especially for people who live south of the the Highway 8, people in Southeast community. Your offices are on Euclid and Imperial, and you have been walking the walk for a long time. You have been the past president of the San Diego County Medical Society and the past president of the National Medical Association. Many people don't know the difference between the American Medical Association and the National Medical Association, but maybe you'd like to tell them.
Well, just very briefly, Alyce, the National Medical Association is composed of mainly African-American physicians, although anyone can join. It was started some time ago when physicians couldn't get into the AMA. That has since passed, and I belong to both organizations.
Well, you've been as I say, a champion for change for a long time, and I happen to know that one of your main hobbies is watching medical politics, and so being a part of that over the years as president of these various organizations and getting to be president, because you have to be very well connected in order to do that, has allowed you to see from the very beginnings healthcare changes. And the kind of changes that we're seeing in healthcare now are what we're here to talk about this evening.
Very good. I think there's a lot going on.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. I mean, things that who would have thought that we would have seen the 44th president of the United States to be an African-American man. We didn't expect to see these kinds of changes in healthcare either, because many times it had been tried.
Correct.
By other people. So how did you envision these changes coming along? What did you work toward, and what do you see happening now that you participated in?
Well, first of all, I think that we're talking about healthcare reform tonight, and one of the things that I'd like your listeners to know and to start off on is that what we really need to do is to call this AmeriCare instead of Obamacare. That has been used to attack the president or to by people who want to try to change things, and I think that it just gives that here's the president who did pass it, and that's why his name is associated with it. So I think that one of the PR kinds of things that I would do is to say, let's start calling it AmeriCare. And so when you start doing something like that, how many people will say, we're out to defeat AmeriCare? You know, and so I think that changes the dynamics, and I'm hoping that we can start doing that on this show and letting it go forward. So
that's what makes you an astute medical politician. AmeriCare, I like that. because we're talking about taking care of Americans.
That's correct.
And that's the bottom line. The fact that this one particular president may have had the skills to articulate all of the pieces, but we will never know what kind of deals have been cut or when they started to be cut. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean that President Barack Obama made all of the deals that have come to fruition.
That's
this
correct.
is all about the care of American people. So I like that. We can move that forward. Let's call it AmeriCare.
All right, very good, very good. Well, I think that it has been historic and so on. If you notice that we're still listed as one of the only civilized countries that do not have universal care, and that means care for all the people. And when we start looking at that, and when we say we have a high quality of care here in America, that and I do think that we have a excellent, very good care, but it's not trickling down to everyone, and when we still have a high infant mortality rate in Southeast San Diego, higher than some third world countries, I think that that's unconscionable. And so I think that this moves the paradigm, changes the dynamics of things, and starts us on the road so that we can say, all right, let's get going here, let's use all of the advantages that we have, and let's talk about health care reform, AmeriCare.
And we do have a lot of advantages. Maybe we have not evolved to the point where everyone in the country is able to access all of the advantages, but we do have a lot. And there is a lot that is available. And how do people who are confused about health care from the beginning and maybe don't have the kind of access that they'd like to have, how do they begin to negotiate this health care reform?
Well, I think that it's easy to do, but everybody talks about the number of pages in the health care bill, which was quite a few. And we haven't looked at all of that, or we haven't evaluated all of that, and so on. But I think that you have to get down to the bare facts and the minimums of what's going on. Some of the things are going on right now, whether people realize it or not. And you or I don't have the advantage of this anymore because we don't have children who are up to 26 years of age. Now, most times when children would go off to college, they would start getting taken off of the insurance policies. With the new Health Care Reform Act, people can stay on until the age of 26. And you feel by that time that they're probably a little bit better on their own, and then they can afford or can negotiate their own care. And so that's a good thing, and it's already taking effect, and it's already meaning a difference to a lot of people.
Exactly.
Another thing that has gone on or is starting to take effect, and that's something that as a nurse background you know about, pre-existing conditions. And so what that means, and to let your audience know, that means if you have something that goes on, I've got diabetes, I've got hypertension, I've had this malady, I've had this thing in the past, even though I'm doing fine now, even though I've changed my lifestyle and I'm doing better, that hangs on to you, and so the insurance will rate you higher or make it more difficult for you to get the insurance.
Or not be able to get it at all.
Or not be able to get it at all.
That was the past activity.
So that's changing. Another big thing along with that area is that children with these congenital diseases, they had a very difficult time of being included in policies, so that goes away, and so on. Another thing that I think is very, very important, because one of the things that we hear about is health care expenses do more to bankrupt Americans than anything else that goes on. And so what happens is that when you get something like devastating, you have cancer. Well, in the past, you would have a policy that said after you reach $1 million or however much in expenses, then you're no longer covered for that any longer. And so people had no further care. This will do away with all of that and so forth. So there's no cap limits, no limits on the cap for your insurance and so forth. So I think that you can see all of these things are very, very good for what's going on.
And very important. We hear all the horror stories about people not being able to get the coverage that they need, or when they need it the most. And so if those things are going away at this point, then we have definitely had a success, a great success, in healthcare reform thus far. But what are the obstacles? What are people taking this bill to court about? I mean, what's that all about?
Well, that's a big point, and there are a lot of issues with that. One of the things that is a linchpin or necessary for this to work, and you heard me at the beginning talk about universal care. This is not universal care. What this will do is that most of us know or may not know that there are 50 million uninsured people in this country. 50 million people without insurance, and there are various reasons why that is. A lot of them young, a lot of them children, and so on. So you've got this whole vast number of individuals with no insurance at all, and so getting them into having insurance means then you have access that you can go and see the physician. Now you have your insurance card. Just because you have the card doesn't mean you're going to get into the doctor's door, you know, and so forth. We know that that some of the areas don't have enough physicians or physician extenders right now anyway, and so we really need to look at revving up and increasing the number of physicians that we train in this country and allowing others to come in. So we know we have to do that. We know we have to extend the physician extender, and I'm talking about physician assistants, nurse practitioners, and that type of a thing. Now, we still have to maintain the quality, so we don't want someone supervising 10 nurse practitioners or 5 physician assistants moving into a neighborhood without any medical care and setting up, because we want the quality there. So that there are certain ratios that are there that the medical establishment kind of sets, and so I think that that will keep that on. But we still have to expand medical providers throughout the country.
Well, when you said something that you said just now made me feel as though we need to perhaps be able to look beyond. If we're not producing enough physicians here in the United States, that we might maybe need to look beyond the United States for qualified physicians to recruit.
Well,
is that what you're talking
that's
about?
one of the things that we need to do that also. But we have to look at some of these physicians come in with language barriers and that type of a thing, and you hear all of this about cultural competency of being able to relate and understand the patients and talk with the patients, because that's very important, and it's something that needs to be done. So that we need to make sure that we're allowing physicians to come in, but I think that homegrown, we have to have a lot more of our own physicians present.
I certainly agree with that. Being a part of the medical establishment myself, and have been for many years, how do we encourage? I know that we've got associations, the Black Nurses Association, we've got a National Medical Association, and I'm certain that there are other ethnic groups that have associations where they are looking to their youth, and they're trying to mentor their youth and encourage their youth. How are we doing with that in our community now? Are we able to attract the young people?
We're probably not doing enough, but we try. The National Medical Association, I go out to schools and elementary schools and talk with students and children, because if you can get them started thinking about math, science, and keeping their grades up during elementary time, by the time they get to junior and senior high school, then they can go ahead, because that's what happens. A lot of these young people don't realize, oh wow, I could be a doctor, and by that time they haven't had the grades there, they don't get into the schools, and that's what's happened. So I think that we just have to keep mentoring and watching. I think that, you know, you hear about all the trouble that we have with our schools and that type of a thing. We need to strengthen those and to make sure that schools all over giving students the opportunity to go into whatever field that they choose.
That's true, but AmeriCare, as we're calling it here, and I'm going to extend that to our education system as well, because there was a time when we had what I call the porch sitters, the old folks, the elders that sat on the porch and they watched the children play in the yard, and they could point out, you know, that one's going to be a teacher, and you know, that one's a doctor. Look how he takes care of those children. Look how she takes care of that dog. Look how they're taking care of that dog. They watched the behaviors of the children, and they molded their personalities, and they encouraged them in the fields that they knew that they had gifts for. Every culture has gifted children who can heal and who can teach or who can fly in the sky, whatever it is that they have the ability to do. And I guess my concern at this point is, are we doing enough to mentor and to direct our young people in the directions that they already have great gifts for?
Probably not doing enough, but we just have to keep working at it. I think exposure, so the more that the students and the children can see, hey, there's a doctor, there's a nurse practitioner, I can do that, because then we can go and tell our stories to them and say, we used to sit in these seats and we used to be here, and so on. Right now they look at TV and they see the football players and the basketball players and the monies that are coming, and a lot of the young men, that's what they want to do, but they can also see and develop that passion. I think that taking advantage and having them go out to UCSD, utilize the school there, and to have them have exposure, and they do have some programs that some of the students can take part in out there.
Well, so mentoring our students, exposing them to the things that are a part of what they're gifted to do already, and directing them in that way. But what about those of us who just don't understand the language that we're being spoken to regarding healthcare at this point?
Well, that's one of the things that you may be hearing a lot about and so forth, and sometimes it's even confusing to me, and I have to go back and look it up.
Don't tell me that.
and study. But I think that just trying to get a better understanding. One of the issues, and you may be hearing a lot about that, is mandate. The mandate. And what we mean by that is that one of the linchpins for this is that everybody has to have the insurance. And so if you have a business and you have 50 or more employees, then you're mandated to have the insurance. If you don't have it, then you could pay a penalty. And so I was reading in the paper the other day, somebody said, well, if this mandate stands up and comes through, and it's not here yet, so that part is not officially here yet, they said, well, I've got 65 people, but I'm going to cut my plan, cut my staff down to 49 people, and so forth. That's not the direction we want to go in, and so on. We want everybody to be able to participate, and I think that once they start seeing the benefit that everybody is going to get, then they can understand this, and to see that not having people end up going to emergency rooms that cost a lot more and we all have to pay for. Not having people get sick and we get to the point we can't take care of them. Not having people getting into later life and needing a lot more of the resources. Those kinds of things we can see and understand. We need a lot more, and we talked about health extenders. I just talked about doctors and nurse practitioners and so on, because we're talking about health providers. We need a lot of health educators. We need a lot of people talking to us about food. The First Lady talks about obesity. The more heavier the kids are these days, the more problems that they're going to have, the more medical problems that they'll have in the future. And so
the more medical resources they'll be having to use.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. You'll develop more diabetes, more hypertension, more cholesterol problems, more cancers. And so by changing the paradigm again, changing the dynamics so that we have a healthier population, I think is essential.
Well, I'm back to that term that you coined a few minutes ago, AmeriCare.
Okay.
Because that is all a part of it. I mean, we talk about providing medical care, but very often prevention is relegated to public health, when as far as I'm concerned, it's all the same thing. I mean, if you're preventing something, that doesn't put doctors out of business. There's always going to be somebody that's going to need that. But to extend that opportunity for health, for robust health, let me put it that way, and to educate people as to how that can actually be, that to me is AmeriCare.
That's correct. And it starts with each one of us. What happens is that if somebody says that I'm just going to sit here, I'm not going to walk, or I'm going to eat the wrong things and so forth, I don't care, and so on, or the doctor told me I needed to take cholesterol medicine, but I don't want to take that stuff, and so I'm going to hold off. So each one of us has to get out and do our part, and so on. I think that we've done better, and smoking has come down, but not enough. You know, other things that are detrimental to our health care are getting better, and so on. And you have a lot of people saying, well, we don't want people to legislate us to stop smoking and to stop using drugs and these kinds of things. And I know a lot of these things are issues that people end up talking about, but I think that we really do need to get out there and to say, listen, if we all get out there and we all do our part, that's going to end up being better for all of us.
AmeriCare.
AmeriCare.
AmeriCare. So that we have to exercise some restraint. And it's a very difficult thing to do when you're being bombarded by all of the electronic media for our children to start smoking. I see a lot of teenagers smoking again these days. To supersize your meals. Now, I must admit that some of the fast food chains are putting in healthier food, but it still got a lot of salt, still got a lot of sugar. I applaud Walmart for recently declaring, and when Walmart speaks, everybody listens. So there's going to be less salt in some food. There's going to be less sugar in some food. I think that is as important a component of AmeriCare as anything else that we're talking about. It's just not being lumped into the whole loaf. But I'm seeing it that way because it all impacts one on the other. I mean, if you're getting oatmeal and it doesn't have, 55 grams of sugar in it, and it, maybe it has 5 grams, it still tastes okay. So isn't that a better thing for the mother to give to her child, or for you and me to eat, for that matter, because it'll help lower your cholesterol,
Well, I agree with that, and just to give you a very interesting story about someone in my family, Langston, who you know. A long time ago, I started looking at all of the cereals, and I said honey nuts and honey oats and honey flakes, and I said, oh wow, we can't, that's too much sugar in there. So I came home and I told my wife, I said, we're just going to have regular cereal, the oatmeals, but also the regular cereals. And so I told her, don't buy any of this other. So she bought the regular cereal, came home, and he promptly put 10 spoons of sugar into his and said that's how he was eating it, And so it defeated the purpose. Now, we changed that, but that's what went on, and so forth. So we have to change those, even in our families.
It's all about setting reasonable limits and being the kind of role models that we want to see the behaviors to continue. This whole subject is something that could take many programs to talk about. But in the last couple of minutes that we have, what would you really like for our listeners to know about healthcare reform that will help them the most at this point?
Well, there's a couple of things that I'd really like to get in that we didn't touch on, and as we sit here in front of the cameras, the webcams, the internet, and that type of a thing, the one thing that I applaud the president for, and I heard him talk about it again, is getting all of us on the internet. There should be no home without the internet. Now, I bring that up to state that one of the things that he did was, and he started this before the healthcare reform, putting money in the stimulus to get physicians to start electronic medical records. We have done that in our office in the past year, and of starting that. Now, what that does is that opens up a whole new parameter, and what I mean by that is by putting in the proper privacy regulations and guards so that you can't look at anyone else's. Within the next 3 years, you'll be able to tap in your name and look at the lab work that you had in my office yesterday as soon as it comes up, because we're going to be connected to the lab, we're going to be connected to the x-ray place, we're going to be connected to the hospital, and that's one of the things that definitely will help. If you go somewhere and then you have to have an emergency, they need to see all of the things, all of your medicines and everything, and so by being able to do that, the connectivity that we have, I think that definitely will help things.
That's also going to mean that we are all going to have to be better informed.
Correct.
We're going to have to raise the bar for ourselves in terms of what we understand about healthcare, what we understand about our own health, and what we want for AmeriCare. I like that term, and I thank you very much for that. Dr. Richard Butcher, who's been a mover and a shaker in San Diego and nationally for healthcare reform for many, many years, and is practicing medicine even as we speak. That stethoscope around his neck is not a prop. He just happened to have come from the hospital with it on. And so I thank you so much for coming, Richard. I feel like you're part of my family, and I'm certain that there are many other people who are watching who feel the very same way. I just happened to get a chance to come to Kwanzaa at your house, so I'm grateful for that.
Very good.
But thank you so much for coming on and being with us tonight. And my hope is that we will have questions that will come. You can call the telephone number that you see on the screen, and if you have questions for myself or for Dr. Richard Butcher, please give us a call, and we will make sure that they get answered in as rapid a manner as possible. Please keep watching, because this is for you. This is all about our community, the people who live in it, the people that are doing positive things. You're not going to hear about them on the 5 o'clock news. That's why you need to watch here. Thank you very kindly. Many blessings to you, and keep watching Community Issues, a tapestry of concerns.